Are you trying to improve at 40k? Well, this is the video for you. Hello and welcome to Incursion Tactics. This week, I will be mostly talking about intent. And no, not playing by intent. I mean how we're intentional with our games to foster a growth mindset and improve. I'm going to go through some practical things that you can apply to your games of 40k, all with the overarching theme of how we can be intentional and purposeful with our desire to get better at this game. This video isn't just for someone who's trying to do better at tournaments. This could be for someone who just wants to improve how they're playing in their casual groups with their mates. If you're someone who's struggling with losing frequently, or you're attending tournaments and you're plateauing, maybe you're struggling to break out of the 3 and 2 bracket at GTs. These concepts that I'm going to discuss will help you. If you're having a greater level of engagement because you're trying to improve and do better, that can increase your enjoyment and not just despairing because you don't really understand why you're losing. That is not a very satisfying place to be. And so it's not all about the winning, but more the focus to try and do better and improve. Some of the most fun games I've had have been ones that I've lost. And they've been fun games and engaging games because I could reflect and see how I've improved as a player, regardless of the result. It's about the journey and trying to do better. And that's exactly what these tips are about. Now, that might sound a little bit counterintuitive if you're thinking, oh, I want to do well, I want to win, I must win, I need to improve, therefore I need to win more. And that will lead to a greater sense of achievement. Winning is a very good metric, right? If you're winning more games, you're naturally getting better. And yes, obviously that can be true. If you're winning more, then yeah, fine. But this is what I'm talking about when I talk about a growth mindset. It's a mindset that's thinking about the long game and not hyperfixated on short-term results or the results of any one particular game or event, as it can be quite an unhealthy thing to attribute our self-worth or value, happiness at what we're doing on the results of these things. And obviously we all love to win. You get that dopamine hit when you win, that's great. But really the winning of any event or game, it doesn't matter in the long term, because once you've won a game or you've won an event, then your eyes are on the next thing. You will always be chasing that W. And so a healthier and more productive mindset is one that focuses on ourselves and our abilities, and the side effect of that should then be the results that we're looking for, focusing less on the winning of an event and the success and the feel good around that, and focusing more on how we get there, the journey. And this isn't me trying to sound poetic, but these are the things that we have control over and that we can measure, reflect, analyze, improve, practice, all of those things. And so by being reflective and focused on ourselves, our own weaknesses and strengths, it puts us in the right mindset to start on this journey and this approach. And so straight away, if you're trying to get better at the game, regardless of where you are at the moment, new player, tournament veteran, take a step back from what it is specifically you're trying to achieve. You can have that as an ultimate goal if you like. And I will be doing a video on how goals are good and we can use goals to improve as well, as that is a fundamental part of improvement and growth, but less about the kind of macro goals that you're trying to achieve, i.e. winning a game or winning a tournament, improving your win-loss record. Stepping away from those things and those distractions that don't actually impact a game and focusing more on the things that do, micro-level things that can improve your games. Now, I used earlier a word intent or intentional, and that was very intentional, pun intended. And what I'm talking about here is the idea of practicing intentionally, rather than just getting your models together on the tabletop and resigning yourself to, I've had a bad run, or I'm just so new at this game, or I'm in this funk of going 3 and 2, and I'm just, whatever I do, it doesn't really matter. I'm just where I'm at, and whatevs. I'm just going to play the game and just try not to get too beat up. Trying not to get too beat up is great, but just going into a game and not really thinking about what you're trying to achieve in that game, having no intent going into that game, is a surefire way to remain in that funk and not break out of that plateau. For example, if you're going against a tough matchup or a tough opponent, even in a practice game, someone's asked you for a game and you'll know that they're a good player and you're thinking, I don't know what to do. Try to think about things in the matchup that you know you don't want to get gotcha'd by, or that you know will be a problem in the game, and make it your goal to avoid those, play around those. So regardless of the outcome of the game, again, taking a step back from the distraction of winning and losing, just concentrate on a specific thing you're trying to improve or work on within that matchup or your own army, and make sure you nail that. My intention in this game is I'm going to not be caught out by a 3-inch deep strike against this army, because I know they've got a 3-inch deep strike, and I want to make sure that I'm constantly playing around that. If you lose that game, but you've focused on that, and then you bring that into subsequent games, improving how you screen out, then that's really good. It seeks to embed a layer of improvement. Maybe poor screening is why you lost a game in the past, and so this could be a really useful thing to have taken note of. I talked about self-analysis and reflection in previous videos, and this is a continuation of that approach in it. So if you haven't actually watched that video yet, I'd recommend maybe just pausing now and going to that video. I'll link it in the description if you've identified where you have lost games or struggled to get on the scoreboard. You've seen things that have impacted how you're winning and losing individual games. And so going on this example of screening again, okay, I've not done so well on primary. Maybe I'm scoring a few primary points here and there, but I'm not quite getting the max that I should be getting every turn. And through a little bit of reflection, looking over previous scores, you use the app or you write scores down and you think, okay, right, I'm not very good at denying opponents coming in from reserves. I need to work on that as a specific thing. That's something that I'm going to go into the game really nailing that one thing, because you're not going to suddenly forget how the other parts of the game work, right? You're still going to know that you need to do other parts of the game to win. But if you're just pinpointing on one, maybe two things that you're just focusing on, making sure you're nailing that until it becomes a habit. I'm sure I've seen written somewhere that if you've got to do something at least 6 or 7 times to make it a habit. And so talking or thinking about screening once, yeah, I might have watched a YouTube video and I know I should screen more. Yeah, great. But if you don't actually implement that, it's not going to stick and it's not going to change your behavior ultimately. And that's, if you really break it down, that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to change your own behavior, which is why that analysis and reflection in the previous video is so important, because these can give you the starting points, the nuggets that you're maybe missing to really help you to identify the things that you want to focus on going into the games. So that intentional approach to a game, super important, because if you don't know what's letting you down, then you're going to really struggle when you play a game to know what to improve or what to be thinking of when you're in that game. So having that intention going into a game and making that the focus, giving yourself these things to work towards, will allow you to develop over time these habits, heuristics, muscle memory, if you like, and ultimately improvements. You won't get caught out by these things if you're focused on them and actively making changes with those things in mind. What can really help with this is setting up some sort of regular gaming structure. And how this is going to look is going to be different from person to person. If you have a local gaming club, fantastic. You can just get games in. You can just be having fun, friendly games with people at a local gaming club, asking around and trying to see where locally things are, where you can have a regular space to meet up and get the games in to allow you to execute on that. If there's no local club and it's more a scenario where you play with friends as often as you can, then trying to set up a regular gaming night is a good idea as well to get that consistent practice in. Could be one day in the week or a weekend, an evening thing. It doesn't necessarily need to be something regimented, but ultimately just trying to get that consistency, that repetition in and that regularity, because that can help. Obviously you want to practice as much as you possibly can, and it's easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, just play games once a week. And I'm very fortunate, I've got local gaming clubs, local stores, all very close to me, a really solid community where if I wanted to jump on Discord and play some games, I could. But I appreciate that's not the same for everyone. If you don't have something that's immediately there at your fingertips, then try to forge that. Be the active person in the community that says, right, I want this, I want a regular thing, I want to improve at this game, but actually it would just be nice to have more people on a regular basis to just play this game with. If you think about it, these things don't just happen, people make them happen. You could be your next community leader. And if you want that improvement and that interaction and that social aspect of it, then that isn't there, locally for you, well, there's nothing stopping you rallying around with your mates that you currently play every so often and creating such a thing. And ultimately, working as a group of like-minded or similarly minded individuals and all the sort of shared goal of trying to improve and enjoy the game together, it creates accountability and helps to foster that growth mindset and really increases the likelihood that you'll stick with stuff and continue with that consistency and working towards improvement. Tabletop Simulator is a big one. I mentioned Discord, and those two go hand in hand. There's some really good Tabletop Simulator Discord communities. You can play from the comfort of your own home. And speaking of TTS, this is a great segue into joining the Incursion. For $2.99 a month, you get access to an additional video every week, but also access to a Discord. I've teamed up with Epic Flail, and we offer a private Discord to all of our paying members. Whether you're a member of Epic Flail or you're a member of Incursion Tactics, you get access to our combined Discord. There is a growing community there, and Tabletop Simulator is one of the things that we have as a channel. If you're interested in playing Tabletop Simulator, there are a number of people in there who regularly play Tabletop Simulator, and it is the place to be if you are looking for an awesome community. So if you're thinking of joining the Incursion, don't delay, sign up today. And by the way, if you're considering purchasing some models or gaming aids, then check out the affiliate links in the video description as well. A few people have already started to use those, and it is wonderfully appreciated. It really does help to keep the videos going. Thank you for your continued support. So yes, Tabletop Simulator is another way we can execute on this plan of intentional practice. And the great thing about TTS is if you're approaching a game with a specific thing in mind, you can do that very, very quickly and achieve that very, very quickly and a lot more conveniently. In particular, it allows you to do things like phase practice a lot more efficiently than you could do in real life. And this is something where you just set up for deployment. I've talked about this in the past. It's not an unfamiliar concept, but it goes hand in hand with if you've got a specific goal. So again, we're talking about screening and movement phases. If perhaps you're trying to set up your deployment and movement in the first few turns of the game to push out for these early deep strikes against armies with teleports or 3-inch deep strikes, that sort of thing, and you want to just practice the setting up against those kind of armies, then that's a really good thing to do. It's this phase practice where you just set up deployment where you play only 1 or 2 turns and then stop and then try again, or review and reflect on what you've done, talk with your opponent and say, had you left a gap, had you made a mistake, had things sort of fallen apart, had you actually nailed it and done really well. You can talk about it, digest that, and knowing that you're just sort of practicing that through and seeing how the game would likely unfold. Because again, it's not about the winning or the losing of the game, it's about that improvement on that focused point that you had. And so TTS is really, really good for that, because you don't have the investment of the time and the effort of playing in real life to getting all the models out. It's a lot more of an easier, palatable thing to get through and practice on TTS if that's something you're trying to achieve, that phase practice. Other things it allows you to do is save games and reset the models up how it was after. Maybe play a turn doing X versus doing something completely different. You can try both out, try one out, and then you go back to what you saved and think, right, let's try this a different way now and see if there's any value in approaching this game in a different way, which is again a lot more difficult to do in real life because it's a bit of a grind to get the models and the time and a willing opponent to do this. Whereas if you can just cobble it all together on TTS really quickly, then you can have these kind of discussions, and that's really, really good. And part and parcel of this is engaging with other people. If you're trying to engage with a community or create a community of people to practice with, then it actually does help to engage with them if you can and say, I'd like to practice more in a very purposeful way, more than just playing a game. Obviously, I'd love to play the game, but I'd like to try and be a bit more contemplative, thoughtful about this. I'd like to be more thoughtful about how I play this game and practice this game. I don't want to not have a fun game with you, but I'm trying to focus on improving and just doing some things better. Would you be willing to help? I'll buy you a beer. Are you up for helping me approach this? I'm trying to improve. Finding a way to approach the crowd that you've got with this desire and seeking like-minded individuals who also might like to improve. You don't have to start a team or do anything overly formal, but just highlighting the fact that I'm trying to do this, and it would be great if you want to offer any feedback afterwards or during that can try and help. I don't want you to play the game for me, but trying to create a sense of regularity, that could be quite helpful. And if that is not as forthcoming in person, then there's all sorts of online forums. I don't want to suggest Reddit. If you want to brave Reddit, then you do so at your own risk, but there are plenty of awesome Discords, a bit like Incursion Tactics Discord, We have a 40k list section, rules section, discussions, all these things that can help. Other communities exist as well. So it's, again, like I said earlier, putting yourself out there a bit and trying to find people that can help you, fostering connection with people, which will ultimately help you to grow as a player. And also then in future, maybe you could then add value to somebody else as well, which is also really nice and part of a really lovely thing that I see happening with communities over time. So there you have it. Actionable, tangible things that we can do to help with that mindset and just how we approach a game. Promise you, over time, this will allow you to be a lot more zen in your games and focusing on things that matter, not getting stressed out about, I'm going to lose this game, I'm going to lose this game. The cold hard truth is you're going to lose a lot more games than you want to. That's the nature of it. And so being okay with that and focusing more on areas of improvement and then doubling down on that, bringing that focus into your games, using your support network of fellow gamers, community members to help work on that. And I've talked about seeking feedback in the past as well. I do after all my games. How do you think that went? Where do you think I could have improved? All those kind of things. Super helpful and a big part of that improvement process. And another bonus thing that can really help with that and helping you to be focused on these things is playing quickly, being more purposeful with how you're getting through the games. A lot of people enjoy breezing through the games at their own pace. Beer and pretzel hammer is a wonderful thing, but if you're working on a thing that you're trying to improve, then using a chess clock is a really powerful way to enhance your games and improve your games. And I made a video about that here, which not only goes through the basics, but talks about some ways to improve how you use a chess clock as well. Because ultimately, if you can get through the games at a quicker pace, you can play more games and practice more games and work towards whatever your improvement goals might be. So it's well worth having a look at that video and seeing how a chess clock can enhance your games. But that's all from me for now. Thanks very much for watching. Keep rolling those dice and stay tuned for more.